Hey YouTubers, just thought I'd throw together a quick video going over the new toy I picked up a couple months back. So as you can see, I've got the Z900, the big brother to the Z125 Pro I've done a video on. And so this is a naked. It's not a lot of mods that I've done to the bike, but I thought I'd still run through them just to give you an idea of kind of what I've done, what's out there, and a few thoughts and feelings on the bike. First and foremost, one thing I like to do is do protection for the bike. So one thing I've done is the OES kit for the bike. So we have the frame sliders, and one thing I like about the frame sliders is that these things fit in the frame really well. They actually are super solid. They're not spindly, crappy little things. So they're, as you can see, they're really solid. It includes the front axle sliders as well as the rear spools for a track stand. Fantastic upgrade. I think you're really good to go with it. As you can see, I've also got the GB Racing engine case covers. Fantastic kit. I know they're over 250 or so bucks, but it's a lot of, to me, it's just great protection to have for your bike. Even if you go with the stock Kawasaki version, you'll notice that they basically sit up here, so they stick out. But unfortunately, in a low side, it'll do nothing to protect your cases down low. So the GB Racing is much better in my opinion. Pair it up with the OES so you get the protection up a little bit higher for the frame and whatnot. And then for the low side aspect down in the case covers, they look really nice. I like them a lot better than the RNG. The RNG, in my opinion, just have a real bulbous look to them. But you can see these are really nice and clean. I think they're just slick as can be. The other thing I did do is put the RNG Radiator Guard on there, and I absolutely love it. As you can see, it is blacked out, so going with the black bike, it just blends in beautifully. I'm not crazy about the Kawasaki version with the aluminum whatnot. I just think it stands out, looks kind of gaudy. Kawasaki version wise, for upgrades, I've done the smoked screen, which is really nice. It definitely helps take the wind blast off your chest, as well as shades your instrument panel just a little bit, as well as just the Kawasaki tank pads. And the other option that I went ahead and threw in on this bike was the Yosh Alpha Pipe. This is by far the easiest exhaust I've ever done. So it took me about 5 minutes to install the pipe. The only complicated thing about it was just you got to have a little bit of muscle to bust that top nut loose. Other than that, I mean, it's just super easy to do. The only thing I'm not crazy about is the really cheap looking kind of cover they put on down there. Akrapovic has an aftermarket one, or an accessory one that you can buy for 80 some bucks. It's carbon fiber. I think it looks a lot better. Why Yosh doesn't do something similar is beyond me. I mean, they've got the nice carbon end cap and heat shield, and then they throw in this really just cheap aluminum meshy kind of piece of crap. Since I'm staring at it, let me go over the suspension. So the stock suspension on the bike is actually pretty darn good. I was really surprised with it. It actually runs a little on the stiffer side once you set the sag. So my sag is set to about 33 millimeters. And I'll give you some tips on adjusting your rear shock, because factory it actually comes with the preload pretty much all the way out, so it's way too soft. So even when you move the bike off the side stand, it squats just horribly bad. The static sag is ridiculous. Why they set it that weak is beyond me. But to get in there, you have to remove this piece, which isn't hard at all, but it's still kind of a hard to access, even with shock spanners, to get at this, to really adjust it. So I would suggest you get a long brass punch and a good hammer and just start busting this loose. But before you do, kind of spray down the both the rings and just the threads on the shock, just to help loosen it up, so it'll help those things spin, because it's going to take you a little bit to do it. I've used both the spanner and the brass punch, and it's a bear, but I think the brass punch in the end is just a lot easier. It's just going to be a lot of tapping. So, but going back to the stock exhaust, doesn't really add a lot of sound. You've got several videos. I know sportbiketrackgear.com does an install. It just adds a nicer note to it. It doesn't really make it louder. And actually on a sport bike, I kind of prefer that. But I don't know how well you can see it. But this actually, the can actually is straight through, right into the cat. So it's the catalytic converter that just really, really deadens the sound. So, but I think it looks a lot better. It's definitely about a 5-pound weight savings. Just all around, just a lot nicer than the stock one. The only negative that I found is, a lot of people complain about the stock guard back here, the heat shield, that it actually, you hit your foot on it, but after removing it, what I found is that, so if I'm on the balls of my feet riding, my heel hits this huge bracket from the stock footrests for the passenger. I know R&G has a carbon fiber aftermarket that slims it down a bit and actually moves, I believe, I think it mounts behind the exhaust mount. The only thing is I have a concern about with that is vibrations. This has a rubber grommet in it, so it kind of isolates it. And one review I saw, somebody had installed it on like an R1 and they said just bring on the vibrations. So I'm not sure how that does. One other little minor upgrade I've done is, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, is the Kawasaki throttle lock. You can get it from Revzilla, but since this isn't the BMW S1000R or the Tuono or anything like that, that comes with electronic throttle and whatnot, what you can do is actually cinch that down a little bit while you're riding, and then it's basically just a friction lock. So essentially you get cruise control. It's not perfect because it's not electronic, so there is going to be some variation. You're going to have to tweak it a little bit, but it's nice just to get a little breather here and there. And obviously you can still, if you need to roll off, you can still roll off, lock it in, and then when you're done with using it, just crank that back off and you're back to stock throttle play. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the bike. Like anything, set your sag on your suspension. It'll be much better for you. I will say the stock suspension on this, while it's fantastic, can be actually on the stiff side, which I would prefer. I would rather have it on the stiffer side than the soft side. But on hard jolts, you will lose probably a vertebrae. So hard edge bumps are pretty brutal. But otherwise, the bike actually does fantastic. It handles extremely well. It's a lot more comfortable than my Ninja. My knees and hips and stuff are so much happier. One negative I will point out on this bike, and I have no idea, I know they got that whole Sagomi styling thing or whatever. I think it's a beautiful bike, but so for this bike they tout that it has a low rider seat height, but then if you look at the passenger seat, this thing is about another 9 to 10 inches higher than the passenger seat. So why it is so stupid high is beyond me, because one issue that you'll find if you're a little more vertically challenged is that while the seat height might be low, you've really got to kick that leg over. So unless you're Jean-Claude Van Damme or Gumby, that's going to be a bit of a treat. It's the only oversight. I don't know why they made it so damn high. They could have tweaked a little bit. I mean, they've got more than enough space to bring it down. So, but I think it's an absolutely fantastic bike. I mean, for the money, it's unbelievable. I mean, considering that you can throw $2,000 into this thing to do full Olin suspension or fully adjustable Olin suspension in the front forks and the shock in the back, you can have an unbelievably stellar bike. The engine is fantastic. The reviews on it, I mean, did not lie. I didn't get to test ride this before I went ahead and picked it up, but it has been an absolute fabulous addition to my fleet. But that's the Black Beauty. Everybody out there, stay safe, keep the rubber side down, and hope to see you on the road.